Before we get into your incredible episode of Under the Banner of Heaven, what was your experience in Hollywood after the response to your breakthrough Lingua Franca?
It's been, a thrilling, surreal ride since Lingua Franca was released by Array. 2 years ago, I signed up with CAA. I developed a few projects, and I made it to the Criterion Closet, the famed Criterion Closet.
Loved
I will
that.
always be one of the highlights since that happened. And I'm now developing my next feature film. We have a producer on board that has won an Oscar for Best Picture in the last 20 years. So I'm excited to announce that in the next few days. And I also landed my very first episodic directing gig with Under the Banner of Heaven, which is a dream come true because just considering the pedigree and the cachet and the talent of everyone involved. It's produced by Ron Howard and Brian Grazer. It's written by Academy Award winning screenwriter Dustin Lance Black, who directs an episode, and Andrew Garfield, White Russell. The cast is just stacked and uniformly superb.
It is. It definitely is. And at the time at the Venice Film Festival when Lingua Franca premiered, you were the first openly trans woman to have a film screened at the festival ever. I'm not trying to go backwards too much, but what did that mean to you personally and professionally?
It's a double-edged sword, and on one hand, I'm very proud that I have that distinction, but I'm also quite sad that I'm the first, openly trans woman of color to have accomplished that, to have had a film premiere at a major, European film festival like Venice. And I hope that Lingua Franca getting into Venice or any other major festival hopefully emboldens and inspires other queer artists, especially trans women of color, to pursue their art and to really make sure their voice and sensibilities are heard, in an artistic medium.
Absolutely, you're right. It is like a double-edged sword. It's something to celebrate, and it's something to make sure that we identify as first. How is this the first, and go from there. Getting into Under the Banner of Heaven, it details two very gruesome murders within the Mormon community in the 1980s, created by Dustin Lance Black, as you said, and based on the nonfiction book by Jon Krakauer.
Yes.
How did the series find its way to you, and why did you say yes?
So it all has to do with Lingua Franca. Lance and Anna Culp, who's an executive at Imagine Entertainment, were already on set in Calgary. And when I was in Venice premiering my short film, Shangri-La for Miu Miu Women's Tales, I got an email from my agent at CAA saying that, hey, there's a script that, you might want to read and you're being considered to direct an episode. I was like, okay, what is this? So I was just like shocked. I was there with my fiance, and I was like literally so squealing in excitement because how could this have happened? And then I just, I read the script. It blew me away. I had a Zoom call with Lance and Anna, and Lance was saying that he saw Lingua Franca and it really connected with him, and he thought I would be a perfect choice to direct this particular episode. And I'd like to say that turns out he was right.
I couldn't agree more. I absolutely couldn't. Yours is the 6th of 7 episodes. How did you fall into the rhythm of something that somebody else wrote, was already cast? Because your your filmmaking, you do everything. You're in it, you
Yes.
produce it, you edit it, you direct. That was there a difficulty in kind of pulling back from that level of involvement?
It actually felt like a relief for me because I've done 3 feature films where I had to conceptualize everything. It was my complete and kind of solitary artistic vision. So it was nice to get into, a new work of art, a new project where I was really genuinely collaborating. And this was really what it felt like. Since it's the 6th out of 7 episodes, the tone and the visual language of the series has been set in the pilot by David Mackenzie. And it's really striking a delicate balance between, making sure that your episode is of a piece with the rest of the series, dramatically, rhythmically, visually, but also kind of finding those opportunities within your episode to incorporate your own flourishes and touches that make it distinctly yours. And thematically, I felt like it was very much up my alley in that Revelation, my episode, is actually the most introspective, the most quiet, and I would even say most soulful episode in the entire series, which is very much propulsive, true crime procedural, but I feel like it comes to a pause somehow in my episode as 3 of our main characters, Jeb Pyrie, played by Andrew Garfield, Sam Worthington, and Daisy Edgar Jones, their respective journeys of faith come to a head that have really important repercussions and implications in their lives and in their communities.
For sure. And I love it. You're almost like answering things I was going to ask ahead. I love it. Yeah, it's the penultimate episode of the series. And I think most of us that watch a lot of TV know that generally that is the most important episode. You get so many answers and so many questions leading into the finale.
Is that the common knowledge that the penultimate episode is usually?
I think sometimes, yeah, you'll get so much of the action in there, and then the last episode is often just resolution and kind of putting things in place, unless you're looking at this escalation of thriller type of drama, and this show definitely is. But so many character themes and arcs really come to a head, and it's everybody that you mentioned. I definitely want to talk about each of them individually, because I think they all deserve a lot of time and thought, because all of them are having a crisis of faith in a very, very different way. And I'd love to talk with you and break down the work of each of them in their pivotal moments in the episodes, and maybe start with Daisy Edgar Jones. And oh my God, that scene with the LDS elders.
Yeah. With Brenda Lafferty, played by Daisy Edgar Jones, I feel like this is one of the episodes that really highlights her journey and her struggle against, the Lafferty men, and just against the sexism and misogyny within that institution. And, at that moment when she's trying to make sure that Alan doesn't leave the fold, and when she feels like she's reached her kind of the boiling point, or she's losing hope that he might still come back into the fold, she asks for a divorce, but instead the LDS elders decides to give her a priesthood blessing, and essentially gives her the responsibility of bringing not just Alan, but his brothers back into the LDS community. And, she's always, it's in this episode especially, that she truly comes across as a resilient character, a fighter who, despite knowing the gravity of the situation that she's getting into and the danger that she is potentially exposing herself and her baby, she took that responsibility head on. And I wanted to make sure that, and with Daisy being so talented and just very emotionally attuned, that Brenda's strength, her resolve, and her agency truly came to the fore.
Yeah. I think you know from my tweet about this episode, I had a very visceral response to it based on my own religious upbringing. It was like PTSD shocking, and that has rarely happened. Where do you think the place is where trauma from experiences like that and healing can meet?
I think, and this is speaking as a filmmaker and as an artist, that art is one way for us to be able to just grapple with it and slowly come to terms with it. I mean, it is a process, sometimes a painful and difficult and protracted one, but art, when we're watching that experience filtered through, this medium and through these fictional characters, I think gives us a certain emotional and psychological distance to view that experience and to process it that way. It certainly helped me in some way. I make my films, I make art as a way to deal with my own, not just trauma, but with my own, I guess, issues that I deal with when it comes to gender identity. Certainly my first feature, Senorita and Lingua Franca, address that in some way. So that's what I do as an artist. And also, I think what we do as viewers, as people who engage with and experience art, that's the kind of catharsis that it allows in some way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What did you know about Mormonism before coming on board, and what was your own personal religious experience like? How did that factor in?
What did I know about Mormonism? Virtually nothing, but I know about Catholicism quite intimately, having grown up Catholic in the Philippines, which is the most predominantly Catholic country in Asia. It's like 95% Catholic in the Philippines. And I identified with Pyrie's growing disenchantment and disillusionment with his religion as he came to know, more deeply what actually happened, in the history of its founding. And in the same way, I was actually quite devout when I was very young. I was an altar boy for a few years in grade school, but like realizing that I was queer, and then also, the more you learn about the history of the Catholic Church and just the atrocities and the injustices and the cruelties that it's caused, to different people, and especially because Catholicism was used as an instrument to colonize people in the East, including my country, the Philippines. So that was my way in to Banner and to dealing with the internal crisis that Jeb Pyrie has to confront in the series, and that reaches its emotional and spiritual climax in the episode Revelation.
Absolutely. We'll get to Andrew in a minute.
Yes. The elephant in the room.
That could be a whole episode. Sam Worthington's Ron Lafferty just really goes through the motions of, you know, a son being denied his father's love and then usurping him later. His arc is pretty scary and pretty incredible. How was working with Worthington, like in the scene on the mountain with Brother Onias, and of course that
Yes.
hot tub scene with Brother John Bryant? Because I was watching that at home with my husband and son, and we were just looking at each other going, wait a minute, our radar is up. What's going on? What's up? And then there you go.
Sam was a delight to work with, actually. He has an artistic temperament in that he's kind of introspective as well, which I was a little surprised by, because he plays these very, you know, macho, iconic action roles, but he is very intuitive as an actor, and he has quite an interesting process in that, you know, he finds the scene, you know, during our takes. Usually the first take is, and he likes to explore and experiment to kind of find the right emotion or feeling for the scene. And usually with the first take, the performance feels big, the scene feels big, and then he slowly hones it in and focuses, so that by the third or fourth take, he's still very much present and real, but we just nail the emotion perfectly. And I also, you know, I feel like, you know, directors in action movies likely tend to just dictate to the actors, okay, this is what we're gonna do. These are the beats that you're gonna hit. But I knew coming into Banner that, you know, these actors, Sam, Andrew, have had a much longer history with these characters. They know them inside and out, you know, through research and just inhabiting their perspective, you know, and their lives over the course of the few months before I even came on board. And I'm not going to tell them like, okay, this is what your character is going to be. I just allow them as the director and give them the space and room to feel free, to feel those feelings that their characters would feel at that moment. So it's really a matter of getting out of the way in some sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, giving them the space to just be present and be in the moment and feel it. And that's, I'm very, very proud of the work that I've done with Sam on this episode, because I like to think, and also what he's done in the entire series, because I feel like it really showcases another side to him as a dramatic actor that we haven't seen before.
That's definitely true. And that's kind of what I was thinking about watching him too. And I love that point that, you know, they've already been living in these characters before you got there. So yeah, you were kind of just letting them get there on their own. I love that. So obviously I'm very interested in how you cultivated your working relationship with Andrew, how, you know, his process was different from everybody else. And I mean, he's a character who's constantly evolving his faith throughout the whole season, and it just culminates in that absolutely devastating moment in the car.
When I read the episode, I wanted to make sure that the way I directed it, we did not lose sight of the dramatic through line. And that important, I think Jeb Pyrie, even though he's a fictional character that was just written for the series, he really is I think the moral and emotional center of the show. And I wanted to open the episode with a tight shot of Andrew, Jeb Pyrie, and close it with a tight shot of him. And so I relayed all this, you know, my vision for the episode and my plan to both Lance, and I emailed Andrew as well about it. And then on the first day that we shot the show. I was understandably intimidated, you know, and quite daunted. It's my first TV show, and I'm working with Andrew Garfield. But you know, the way Andrew is very, very meticulous. He comes to set prepared, you know, and he has done his homework and his research. And when you're directing him, you need to be able to justify and rationalize every creative choice and decision and direction that you're making. And so, you know, that process was actually exhilarating because he demands so highly of himself, you know, and is excellent that you can only step up and meet, you know, those standards. But he was, of course, always gracious and sweet about it all through the whole process. And so I would send him, like, in between breaks, sometimes if he's in his trailer, just send him texts about, you know, how we're gonna approach the next scene. And also when we're doing, you know, takes between scenes, I try to give him very, very specific just notes, and that could change the feeling of a scene. And another thing that I did was, because Andrew is so open and emotionally expressive, like you can read his emotions on his face, is that for that car scene to really land as powerfully and as impactfully as we needed it to, is to make sure that we repress and suppress those emotions in earlier dramatic scenes. The scene in the bathtub with his mother, the scene where he's speaking with Brenda Lafferty's sister and father, to kind of just tamp down those emotions so that they kind of build up, you know, and are pent up, so that by the time we reach that climactic moment in the car scene, his breakdown doesn't feel overblown or excessive, but just feels right. And
and he's trying to even restrain it in that scene when Rebecca gets in the car.
Yeah,
it's also a fascinating opposite parallel, Jeb and Rebecca and their process with Brenda and Alan. It's almost like the roles are reversed a little, because she's like, I'm giving up on you if you don't do this. And it's quite the opposite.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, she should have been the one person, you know, that would have been more sympathetic toward, you know, about his doubts and his growing ambivalence about his faith. So it's really heartbreaking, and it, you know, I can only take so much credit, but it's Andrew. For that scene, actually, you know, we didn't really talk about it that much, except just I decided to move it from the bathroom to the garage. I feel like physically and geographically, it feels more isolated, and therefore more desolate and sadder. But all I told Andrew in preparation for that scene is, like, Andrew, we know what the scene is about, and you know what to do.
I've talked with him a couple of times,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm actually going to see him in a couple of days too. I'm
Okay.
excited. And he is an extraordinarily empathetic person, and I just think that it works so well with you as a filmmaker, because your work is extremely empathetic too. And I just think I'm trying not to play favorites, but I really do think this was the best episode of the season, because it converged on all of those qualities, both you and your actors, with the material.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think we were just attuned, you know, emotionally. I mean, it's one of those scenes where you just both know, as the actor and director, how the scene needs to be played, and he nailed it. You know, it feels so genuine and so real and visceral. Because of that, you know, he needed 30 minutes, And by the time he was ready, we were ready to roll.
Yeah. Was this experience enough to make you want to do television again?
Oh my God, yes. I'm doing one right now. I also, yeah, it's a nice change of pace from making feature films. Of course, I'm hoping to shoot my next feature by the end of the year or early next year. But yeah, to kind of, it's like, going into a different world or exploring a new place with, different creative partners and collaborators. Yeah, because I feel like as an auteur, I feel like I'm essentially playing with similar themes and questions and issues in my work. So it's exciting and thrilling to kind of enter the mind, the creative mind and headspace of other writers.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you have kind of teased a little bit the next two things that you have, including what you're working on right now. Is there anything you can reveal as to what it might be or be about?
The show that I'm working on might be, we can call it my return to my roots of sensual cinema in some sense.
All right.
But we also have a hot tub scene here. Maybe not a gay kiss, but there's certainly a hot tub scene and sensuality in there. But Tropical Gothic is my next feature that I'm working on. And it's my fourth feature. I'm also really excited because I really wanna, be a lot more ambitious creatively and take a lot more risks. I told myself, if I break through in the industry, I don't want to rest on my laurels, and I want to continue expanding my artistry and taking on, new challenges creatively and visually and artistically. And that's what I hope to do with my next feature.
Well, I think if there's anybody that can do that, it is you. You break through constantly. So I expect that to continually happen.
Thanks, Eric.
Isabel, thank you so much. And I'm wishing you the best of luck with this episode in the coming months. And I hope everybody has seen it and caught up. I think at the time of we're recording this, the season finale just aired.
Mm-hmm.
So, no spoilers. If you've seen it, you've seen it. If you haven't, go ahead and watch.
And Andrew, if you're watching this, let's work together again soon.
It is. I will tell him that on Sunday.
Awesome.
I will tell him that, and he will be thrilled. I can guarantee it. Isabel, thank you.
Thanks, Eric. See you on Twitter.
Yes.